I'm a 22-year-old male, and I live with my fiancée. We had a nice apartment, but we were really looking to buy a house. I know, a little young for that, but we both landed really nice jobs after college and figured that it's better to get it out of the way now and start settling down. We're old-fashioned like that. My fiancé's grandmother owns a home, and no one lives in it. She's had it for about a year since a family relative passed away. No one wanted anything to do with it since there was a lot of work that needed to be done, like painting the walls and redoing the floors, and just various tasks like that. It wasn't completely horrible inside, but there was enough work that it literally sat there for a good little while. Well, my fiancée and I started talking to her grandmother about buying the place. She told us that she would sell it to us for a low enough price that we would be able to afford all of the renovations and whatnot. We were really excited about it. It was really exciting to think that we were going to have purchased our first home together so shortly after graduating from college. But here was the problem. She had a lot of people in her family who started feeling left out. It was my fiancé's aunt and her 2 sons. Their father had died shortly after the second son was born, and the mother had a hard time coping with everything. She was a regular drinker and arguably an alcoholic. My fiancée told me that they were extremely negative people, and after meeting them a few times at family functions, I was surprised at how right she was. They lived in government housing. She collected disability fraudulently, and her 2 sons didn't work, despite one being 24 and the other being 19. There were whispers of drug abuse in there too. Suffice to know that these were not the kind of people you wanted to associate with. When word got out that we were buying the house from her grandma, they started feeling really left out. There were a few occasions where they tried offering to watch the house. Very obviously an attempt to get in there and do God only knows what. We politely declined and did everything we could to avoid them. I happened to be at the house one day. My fiancée was working, and I work remotely online, so I was home alone. I had just walked down the street to buy a lemonade when I saw someone at our house. It was extremely unexpected. I got ready to confront a potential burglar when I noticed it was my fiancé's cousin trying to break in. He was startled when he saw me and froze for a minute. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me something about thinking he saw a car he didn't recognize in the driveway. I explained that it was my car, and he left without any big confrontation. As he walked away though, I heard him start cursing under his breath. This was the point when I really started feeling like we had something to worry about. Not feeling safe inside your own home is the worst feeling ever, especially being too young, recent college graduates. We both worked really hard to make this happen. And the idea that it made us feel unsafe there really bothered us. I still didn't even understand what they wanted out of the whole thing. They didn't have enough money to afford the property tax alone. Forget about utilities and anything else. About 2 weeks went by without any kind of confrontation. I had falsely convinced myself that they'd finally leave us alone. I was dead wrong. We went to McDonald's one day. Exactly 1 week ago today, the day I'm writing this. Me and my fiancée both just wanted to be out of the house for a little while. Considering we were in the process of buying a house, we didn't want to go eat anywhere expensive, so McDonald's just seemed like a logical decision. Now, before I continue, I feel the need to explain something about my fiancée and me. We are normally very serious people. We work very hard and we're both kind of workaholics. But when we get together to have some fun, we go hard. Work hard, play hard, right? Well, we got kinda silly when we played. Let me cut to the chase. We were playing in the ball pit at our local McDonald's. We always enjoyed goofing off like that, and we weren't too concerned with what people would think of us. We had only been messing around for 5 minutes when her cousin showed up at McDonald's too. It was creepy. He walked right in, looking at us the entire time. Before he even opened the front door, his eyes were stuck on us. And they felt heavy. My fiancée immediately knew something was wrong when my facial expression changed and she darted around to see what I was looking at. We both watched as her cousin made his way out to the ball pit. He stepped outside. As he walked, he moved his body to grab something out of his pocket. I couldn't see what it was, but my first thought was a gun or a knife. The look in his eyes told me he was out to do serious harm. He jumped into the ball pit in my direction. I luckily landed one solid punch in his face as he came down. It threw him off. I had an advantage. He kicked me in the stomach, but I landed a few more punches on his face. He started screaming for me to stop and that I was killing him. I would have kept going if my fiancée hadn't been watching. He started this, not me. We got out of the ball pit. He then began telling us that he was going to press charges on me for assaulting him. I wasn't even fazed by this. There were plenty of witnesses there that had seen the whole thing transpire. I started telling him that I was calling the cops and I was going to press charges on him. He got really panicked and ran back to his car and drove off. Not going to lie to you, this whole thing really shook me up. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. I looked around online and found an easy solution, a restraining order. My fiancée and I both got restraining orders on her aunt and her two cousins. I didn't know why we didn't think of this sooner. It really solved the issue, and once they understood that we had restraining orders on them, they buggered off. I haven't seen or heard from them since. And that's basically the end of this story. This story happened a couple of years ago, about 8 years actually. I was 10 years old at the time, and it's the reason I haven't gone back to McDonald's for nearly a decade. I never plan on going back there again actually. The story itself is pretty unbelievable, but it is what it is. You didn't have to live through it, but I did. My mother worked a really decent job in the city. My father was out of the picture, so that left my brother and me to be taken care of by our grandparents most of the time. That's not the worst thing in the world, my grandparents are the best. But my grandmother is kind of a health freak. This meant that we weren't allowed to have any kind of sweets, soda, junk food, or anything else that was tasty. Their house was always a lot of fun, but we never got to enjoy the food that we really wanted. So, whenever my brother and I were with our mom, we tried talking her into bringing us to McDonald's. We loved going there. I particularly loved the French fries, chicken nuggets, with a milkshake. I got that every single time I went. It was my absolute favorite. But as much as I loved that meal, this one experience was so bad that I never wanted it again. And it goes like this. My mom had gotten off work a little early this one day and picked us up at about 4:30 in the afternoon. This meant that she was going to be able to have enough time to bring us to McDonald's, which we had been begging her to do. We made our way there, and I remember singing some goofy song on the radio as we drove there. My brother and I were so excited, and my mom was happy that she could make us happy. My mom was not a fan of eating in the car. She really liked her car and wanted to keep it clean, which meant no eating, so we went inside to eat. When we were in there, everything went just as you'd expect. We ordered our food, sat down, and ate. That's all there really was to it. The bad part didn't come until we started to leave. We were making our way out of the McDonald's when a Mexican man with a really strange mustache started saying something to my mom. I remember him being somewhat incoherent because of a thick accent, and many of the words were ones that I had never heard before. I immediately identified this man as problematic and could tell by his body language that he was a threat. But after all, I was only 10 years old and couldn't do a whole lot. My mom got my younger brother into the car, put his seatbelt on, and closed the door. She told me to get into the car too. I can tell by her panicked tone of voice that she was extremely worried by this guy. No matter what he said, she didn't reply. My mom got into the driver's seat and started the car in the same motion and then went to close her door. But by this point, the man was already close enough that he could hold the door open and stop it from being closed. My mom started telling him to back off, but he only got more aggressive. He started saying stuff like, "You can't run from me, chica," and other stuff like that. That was one of the only phrases I remember him saying. Again, a lot of it was incoherent to me. My mom never did get her door closed until she started backing out anyway, and knocked this guy onto the floor. I guess he wasn't expecting her to actually go, but this only antagonized him even more. I remember watching him as my mom was peeling off. He got back up immediately and ran to his car, which was only a few parking spots away. He started it and started following us. He wasn't trying to run us off the road or anything, but he was definitely following us. I remember asking my mom what we were going to do. She said that I had to be quiet and let her think. Well, we drove around for about 20 minutes. I could tell that it wasn't the path to go home that we always took. I remember it feeling like a really long time that we were on the road. The sun started to go down, and we all felt a lot of tension. My mom eventually had the good idea to go to the police station. She called the police on her cell phone before she got there and told them about the situation. When we got there, there were policemen waiting in the parking lot. Despite there being cops all over the place, this guy still followed us, parked right behind us, and got out of the car running at my mom. It was honestly horrifying. Thankfully, a police officer had tackled him, and they took care of him from there. They put him into handcuffs and took him somewhere into the police station. They eventually brought us in and asked us questions about what had actually happened. My mom told them the whole story from start to finish, and then we went home. It was really scary to experience as a kid, and I still think about it sometimes. The craziest part is that this guy was confident enough to still go after my mom with police around in front of a police station. I don't know what kind of judgment he had, but whatever it was probably impaired by drugs or something. A couple of weeks later, a lawyer had contacted my mom. He was trying to prosecute this guy for multiple crimes. He claimed that this guy who had tried to abduct my mother was actually a leader in some kind of a gang. It wasn't MS-13 or anything, but it was a fairly significant street gang in our area. My mom told him no because it would mean putting herself and her kids in danger. She knew that there was going to be a risk testifying against a gang member, and she didn't trust the police officers to keep her safe. My mom didn't tell me that last part until a couple of years later. I must have been about 15 years old when she finally told me. I totally understood why she refused. I'm not sure whatever happened to this gang member, but he did a really good job of intimidating people into not testifying against him. I can't even imagine the kind of person this guy was, though. Imagine going to McDonald's, seeing a mother with 2 kids, and then wanting to abduct her. And then being crazy enough to follow her on the road for a half hour and park behind her in front of a police station. And even then, he still got out of the car and ran toward my mom. I don't know what happened to that guy to make him like that. I just seriously hope that this prosecutor was eventually able to get him on something and lock him up for life. I don't know how people like that are able to roam the streets freely. This happened a couple of years ago. I was a freshman in college, my second semester. I was kind of a loner, if I'm going to be honest with you. Still am. At the time, I had a small YouTube channel where I made enough money that I didn't have to work a regular job. Most college students have to work fast food or whatever, and I was fortunate enough to not have to be one of them. Don't get me wrong, I was poor and still lived with my parents, but I made enough online that I was comfortable enough. I remember my schedule was pretty hectic this second semester. I had a really long day on Friday. Every Friday, my first class was at 7 a.m., and my last class of the day was at 4 p.m. There were a couple of hours between classes throughout the day, and I think I had about 4 in total. I lived too far from my college to be able to justify driving back home, so I just kind of had to wait around on campus all day long. It was only about 4 weeks into the semester when I was really tired of this routine already. I seriously thought about dropping one of the classes, but I figured that it was going to be worth it if I could graduate when I planned to. At the end of this particular Friday, I was starving. I didn't like to eat anything on campus because I didn't really trust the staff. I know that might be bad to say, but there was this one time that I ordered food from the cafeteria on campus and got food poisoning. They're a little infamous on campus, and there are very few people that regularly eat there. Understandably so. I just found myself waiting until I got out of class to eat, and then I can eat somewhere that I actually wanted. I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to eat after class, and I just settled on grabbing some McDonald's on the way. I was originally planning on picking some up at the drive-thru, but I also had to really go to the bathroom by the time I got there. I just figured it would be easier to go in and order inside. I always found it difficult to order at the drive-thru anyway. I had a hard time understanding what people were saying through the microphone. So, I got in there, ordered my food, and I was good to go. I was just going to bring it into my car and eat as I drove home. But I noticed something weird going on. Right outside of the McDonald's, two people were having an argument. They looked like they were around my age, probably late high schoolers or college students themselves. I stood there for a moment watching to see if the argument between these two people escalated. It did. The man started holding the girl's arms down and pinning her against the car. I was assuming it was one of their cars. I wasn't sure if they were together or what the situation really was. I didn't really want to intervene because it was somebody else's drama and not really my problem, but I got more and more anxious about the girl's safety. This guy was a lot bigger than her. He at least had a foot of height, and he looked like he was an athlete. I stood there for a few more minutes watching to see what was going to happen. I couldn't really hear what they were saying, but I understood that the situation was getting worse. It eventually got to a point when he opened the car door and threw her inside. I mean, literally pushed her and flung her inside of the car. She didn't scream or anything, but it looked very startling. Made me jump a little bit. And then he went inside of the car too. They were in the back seat, and I immediately got suspicious when he closed the car door behind him. I heard the girl start screaming from inside of the car and immediately knew that I had to do something. I put my McDonald's food down on the sidewalk and then ran over to the car. I opened the car door, and he was very obviously surprised that I had done so. I saw that he was about halfway through taking off his belt. I punched him in the back, and this antagonized him. He struggled to get out of the car so he could fight me. Thankfully, there were a few other people who had gotten involved before me and him had a go at it. There were two older men in their 40s who happened to be walking into the McDonald's that turned around and came over to help. When the other people started to get involved, he got anxious and just got in his car and drove away. I asked the girl what had happened. She told me that she didn't know that guy and he was just some random freak that wanted to use her for sex. She claimed that he asked her to do it, but when she declined, he started getting confrontational about it. And I guess that was when I had noticed what was going on. This guy wasn't very smart. We were eventually able to identify him, and he was eventually charged with attempted sexual assault. The situation could very easily have been bad. If I hadn't intervened, he may have been able to do God knows what to this poor girl. It's crazy to think that such a horrible crime was almost committed in such a public place. I mean, people are always at McDonald's. The thought that someone could even attempt such a violent and repulsive act in public like that blows my mind. The girl thanked me profusely as I had just saved her a lot of physical and psychological torment. I told her that I didn't do anything special and I was just doing the right thing.